Hello, my friend. My name is Byron, and I'm from the BJJ Brick Podcast. I want to thank you for checking out the podcast on the YouTube channel here. It's a weekly show dedicated to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and having fun on the mats. Enjoy the show.
Thank you for listening to the BJJ Brick Podcast. We'll be bringing you Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and good times. We hope to flatten your Jiu-Jitsu learning curve, help you get the most out of your grappling ability, and meet your goals both on and off the mat.
Welcome back, my friends, to another episode of the BJJ Brick Podcast. This is episode 236. We have an interview with Brandon Mullins. My name is Byron Jabara. I'm here with my good buddies Gary Hull and Joe Thomas. Gary and Joe have just got finished sharpening their lightsabers. I didn't know that was a thing, but they just got done from the Comic-Con, and their lightsabers are steamingly hot. I don't know how hot they get, but we got a great episode this week, and we look forward to bringing that to you this week. Joe and Gary, how's it going?
It's going pretty good, Byron. I got to tell you, though, Gary's lightsaber really isn't big enough to be effective, so he just spends most of the time at these conventions watching other people play with their lightsabers.
I'm a watcher. I really do like to watch people, polish their lightsabers and stuff like that.
Wow, this is more of a dagger.
But the nice thing about not having an extra large lightsaber is it fits into my tool bag.
Gary, you got it working for you, and that's a big thing. You have some obstacles in front of you, and you're taking those obstacles, and suddenly you look at this short lightsaber, and you think, what can a guy do with this? You walk around with it in your tool bag all happy that it fits, and everybody else has to have theirs dangling from their hip like a bunch of idiots. And that reminds me of our quote of the week. A successful man is one who can lay a firm foundation with the bricks others have thrown at him. And that's by David Brinkley. And man, it's really just about using the things that happen negatively to you and building something with that. And Gary's, he's got the short lightsaber, using that as a positive. He's walking around with that tool bag and it looks cool. Gary, the quote fits you well. I had to throw that in a little bit early because it just fits so well with your description of how you were using the short stick that you were handed.
Well, Byron, we hang out together. Birds of a feather flock together. But, I'm just thinking about this quote, and you think about all the bricks that have been thrown at David Brinkley. A lot of people are jealous of him because he's married to Chrissy Brinkley.
Yeah, and, jealousy gets a lot of bricks thrown. This quote reminds me of the book by Ryan Holiday, The Obstacle is the Way, where really look for things that are restricting you or look like a negative and turn them into a positive, and really is turning tough times and trials and using that. And we see that a lot in Jiu-Jitsu. If you have something that is a negative, can you turn it into a positive, or maybe you build a stronger positive around that negative? And I think about Jiu-Jitsu and the techniques I have. I recently took away my triangle choke from most of my rolling. I guess I brought it back a little bit. For about 2 years now, I didn't triangle anybody because I kind of looked at it and I said, you know what? Most of the time when my lower back hurts, it's from a triangle choke. I could throw on 50 triangles and they're all good and I'm good to go. 51, I got a hurt lower back the next morning. And that was my most annoying jiu-jitsu thing that would pop up with me. So, okay, no triangles. Boom, gone. And yes, I got less submissions. Yes, there are people that could just hang out my guard and not get threatened like they used to. But my omoplata has really taken the place a lot of my triangle. And so I would say the taking that triangle away has straightened that. And then my arm-in guillotine, Hingertine style, has really taken the place of a really good attack that I have for my guard, where my triangle was once the dominant thing to do. Now, I have brought that back a little bit. I'll triangle a few people that I know that are unlikely to hurt me and that sort of thing. But, I'm doing less than a triangle a month, and I'm just kind of throwing those to help. Basically, it's my wife, because she rolls a lot with me. she doesn't get a lot of defense for the triangle, and so I feel like, I should throw some triangles on it occasionally, and do that too. But really, that's one example of, like, hey, that's a negative. My back keeps getting hurt. My triangle choke is the best thing I have going for me. Take it away. That was a tough couple of months adjusting. But the things that have grown since then have really grown a lot.
You know, in the quote, they talk about bricks that are thrown at you. And I'm thinking about when you're newer in jiu-jitsu and you go to class, and every night it feels like that. I mean, you just taking a whooping, almost taking a beating every night during the open rolling parts. And, you know, even when your training partners let you work a little bit, you still feel like you're on the losing end of the battle. And it kind of reminds me of that image where a horse is falling into a pit and the farmer decides, you know what, I'm just going to bury that old hag there. And he starts throwing dirt in, and every pile of dirt that lands in there, the horse just kind of steps on it. And before you know it, the horse is up and out of the ditch. And so you can view that as, you know, people are just throwing dirt on me, or, you know, throwing bricks at me, or you can use that as people are giving me the things that I need for the foundation that I'm going to build my BJJ brick game on. And every time you go to class as a newer student and you kind of take a beating, trust me, things are kind of, you're absorbing things, and those things are going to come back later and be the foundation of your game.
Yeah, and one of the big things with the book, The Obstacle is the Way, and I don't know why I've derailed the quote to the book by a different person, but is really controlling how you perceive something. And the horse's perspective, oh, the guy's throwing some more dirt so I can get up, and he's just like done, and he can't get this horse out of this pit. But if you're able to perceive things in a positive view, or maybe as a tough thing now, but long term it might be okay, just that type of a philosophy really can help you get through some tough times.
Yeah, and I'm with you, Byron, there. I was thinking about, you know, the bricks being thrown at me as injuries. And I just remember, you know, I hurt my rotator cuff, and, you know, I really could not even lift my arm for about a year straight. I could still roll. I just couldn't get my arm in that position. And I used to just keep it pinned to my body and just try to kind of almost roll one-handed. But by keeping it pinned to my body, man, my hip movement got so much better. My underhook got so much better. And you know, I made myself a better grappler because I had to roll one arm for about a year. And, you know, I could have sat on the sidelines and, you know, read books and coached and, you know, stuff like that. But, you know, I wasn't hurt enough where, you know, I had to stay off the mats, and you know, that was a brick that came my way. I could have looked at it and not rolled for a year and been unhappy with myself and turned to drinking and drugs and probably lost my job and ended up in jail. Or I could have stayed on the mats and had fun and learned some stuff. And I chose the latter.
Two extreme options.
But he did have a moment where he was on the fence. So if you saw the Craigslist ad, just disregard. He's no longer going that direction.
Never. Not again. Yep.
Oh, man. But
I did make a little. $20 is $20, Joe.
Quickly, I'll mention our audio books that we have out. Your first year in BJJ is really geared at towards the people who are just starting jiu-jitsu or thinking about jiu-jitsu. I want to walk you through some of the hurdles that you might run into as far as just finding the right gym, what to expect your first month, your first day, and really all the way up to, should I compete? What would it be like, and what to expect, and how could I do well when I compete? Those sort of questions. You'll experience a lot of those your first year, and I want to help you out with those. The audiobook is about 2.5 hours long. It's $11.99. There'll be a link to it in the show notes. Quick little note here. People always, like, they'll send me email, and they'll talk about, like, we're some big company. Hey, if somebody got this audiobook and the link or something like that didn't work for them or whatever, so I try to send it through another way or whatever, it's just me over here trying to do customer service. We're not a big company. This is... I'm editing this stuff. I got Joe, on Skype and Gary on Skype, and so I really appreciate anything. The audiobooks have been very successful. Nobody's complained about the content. We had one person a couple weeks ago have a little bit of trouble as far as downloading it, and I don't know what that was, but I sent them a different link to it, and they were able to get it through that. And just know that it's not some major company over here. It's just a couple of guys running a podcast, and this book has been a big help. financially for the podcast, $11.99, and I know it's helped some people get on the mat and stay on the mat, and that's a win-win situation.
Yep, and if you're thinking I'd love to support the show, but I don't need a book about my first year in BJJ because I've been doing this for 8 years already, man, it's a great gift for a new student. So if you're one of those purple or brown belts, or you're a coach and you like to help new students out, and you would like to support Byron and his efforts to become a jiu-jitsu content mogul, then go ahead and buy the book and pass it on to a new student at your gym.
Joe, I think you're going to make Byron's head a little bit bigger talking about the mogul.
I have to go buy a new hat, Joe. We do have a off the mat lesson. Joe recently brought this one up on our Facebook page. But Joe, what do you have?
Yeah, if you've listened to the show once or twice or followed the Facebook page, you might know that at 50 years old, I decided to teach myself to do something I've always wanted to do, and that was skateboarding. So I've been doing it 6 or 8 months so far, and I have a grandson that lives with me, and he just loves to come out in the yard, out in the driveway, and skateboard with me. And it's really cool seeing a kid that small that is comfortable. You can put him on the board, and I hold his hands and kind of push the board and walk with him, and it's really a neat thing, and it's great to have him out there. I noticed, though, last time I put him on the board, I was getting a little frustrated because he wouldn't put his feet where they should be. And as soon as I felt that frustration, I'm like, you know what? I've seen enough videos of parents freaking out at their kids when they're at sporting events and stuff. I said, I'm not going to ruin this for my grandson. So we went in and ordered him a tricycle, which is more age appropriate as far as where his where his physical abilities are at, and it will allow him to continue to be out in the driveway with me and continue to have fun. And of course, when he wants to get on the skateboard, I'll let him. But it's just a more age-appropriate thing. And I thought about how that type of parenting or coaching relates to kids in jiu-jitsu. And, if you've got a son or a daughter in jiu-jitsu, don't put unnecessary pressure on them. Don't put unreasonable expectations on them. Just let them have a good time. Take them to tournaments for the experience, not for trying to accumulate some sort of a win-loss record. And, just keep it fun. And if you're a coach, keep it fun for the kids. So, that really, as soon as I felt that frustration and found the right solution to the problem, I thought about jiu-jitsu, and there's certainly a correlation there. Don't you think, Gary?
Yes, Joe, I can tell you I went through that same stuff with my son and my daughter. And, my daughter was my first kid, and started playing baseball, and I was going through that, hey, you should be able to catch better, you should be able to field better, you should be able to hit better. And, the first couple of games, I was terrible. I was, as soon as the game went over, then, we'd talk, and, I wanted to get out there on the field and start practicing and work on the weaknesses that I saw. And here she is, a 5-year-old girl playing t-ball, and I'm just making her life miserable and making my life miserable for, unrealistic expectations. And what I did after, I think, the second game is I just sat back. I wouldn't say a word, and I just let my daughter play. And I finally got my mind right and decided to let her play. And, man, it was crazy. After the first 2 games, she just had a smile on her face the whole time. She may not have improved like I wanted her to, but the key is that she had fun. And I just realized I had to sit back and realize that the goal is to have fun. Not for my daughter at 5 years old to be an all-star, the best player, and get a college scholarship down the road. It's all about having fun. That's what sports are. And I wish I would have read something like that. I know as soon as you put it up on our Facebook page, I saw people commenting about it and saying, hey, this is just what I need at this point. And, I think that was great advice you had right there, a great story, and, something that can help everybody.
Yeah, after a jiu-jitsu tournament, there's probably 5 things you can tell your son or daughter that they could improve on. But really, probably the best thing you can say is, great tournament, let's go get a Dairy Queen and get an ice cream.
I'm down for a blizzard. Nobody ever turns that down.
Yeah. Quick little tip on that one. If you go to Dairy Queen and get a blizzard, they have one called the Chocolate Extreme. Ridiculous, but they make it with vanilla ice cream unless you tell them you want it with chocolate ice cream. So that's what I get when I go to Dairy Queen.
I get the M&M.
with a lot of chocolate?
Well, no, with whatever they make it. I'm
Gary.
not one of those rough. I'm not one of those mean customers.
You gotta get it with chocolate ice cream, Gary. I don't know. That's anyway. We can't bring up Dairy Queen without me derailing the whole thing.
Yep. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Dairy Queen.
That's right. That's right where I was going, Garrett. That's awesome.
We are going to get sued next week by Dairy Queen.
No, it's it's a good off. After you get done training really hard, go all in on the blizzard.
But make sure you didn't miss the special episode last week from Sam Spiegelman. So even though we had a blizzard and treated ourselves, we're still going to be in good shape.
There you go. Wow. The BJ Brick extra episode. In case you missed last week, we're kind of airing a couple back to back. The extra and the regular Monday show lined up pretty quick. But I think how podcasting works, the best I understand, and I've studied it a little bit, is people will download episodes they haven't heard yet. And when one comes out and then like you get on Monday, oh wait, there's another one. You get both of them and you check them out. So I think it'll be just a great way to get extra stuff to you.
So
really,
what Byron's saying is some of you guys have listened to us 2 days in a row, and I want to know what's wrong with y'all.
Those guys, you know what they need, Joe? They need
What's
a
that?
blizzard.
They
need a blizzard.
You deserve it. I had a great time talking with Brandon Mullins. I was talking with a couple of my training partners. They said, how come you haven't interviewed Brandon Mullins yet? And I'm like, yeah, I should. He's got a lot of good stuff out there as far as helping us on the mats and a lot of good technique. He's a smaller framed guy, and he's good at relating things and explaining things. It's not always the case that when somebody is good at jiu-jitsu, they're also good at explaining it. With Brandon, you get that. This really shines through particularly well in this interview. He's very well spoken. He's good about explaining his ideas and why some things are important. And I think you'll hear me get a little excited as we're talking, but it's hard sometimes to explain these concepts over a podcast, and usually we do pretty good, but Brandon excelled at this, and he had a lot of cool examples to explain what he was wanting you to visualize, and we'll get to those right now. He is the most interesting grappler in the world.
He has never needed to go check a noise in the middle of the night. He just lays and waits, ready to play guard. Long ago, there was a guard called the Caterpillar Guard. This guard was pretty ineffective. After spending 2 weeks working on this guard, he made a few changes, and it became what is now known as the Butterfly Guard.
I don't always listen to podcasts, but when I do, I prefer the BJJ Brick podcast. Stay sweaty, my friends.
All right, my friends, I'm excited to bring Brandon Mullins to the BJ Brick podcast. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
It's great to have you here. I heard a lot about you. You definitely have a strong online presence, and you're really helping people all over the world better understand jiu-jitsu with your teachings and just watching what you're doing. But if somebody hasn't found you yet, can you just give us a little bit of an introduction of who you are and what you're up to?
Sure. My name is Brandon Mullins, of course. I've been training, in jiu-jitsu specifically, almost 20 years. I started in 1999, and I did some wrestling before that, about 3 years. I did some judo before that. And so I kind of started like official jiu-jitsu training a little bit late. I was 19, and which is, relatively late for somebody who's going to compete at a pretty high level and at black belts. And so I generally always competed at the master as well as adult. Most of my big accomplishments in the adult category, I was actually already a master's competitor. As far as, my online presence, you can find me on Facebook just under Brandon Mullins. And I also have a company called JustGiPants.com, providing the world with top quality replacement gi pants. And you can find that on my website, just JustGiPants.com. There's also a Facebook page, a YouTube channel, and I have a blog too called Art from Effort, which you can find by navigating my website, JustGiPants.com. There's a little tab there, a blog tab. You can go directly to it. It's probably the easiest way.
Yeah, and we'll put links to all that in the show notes that are on everyone's iPhones or everyone's phones right now. And we'll talk about some of the stuff that's on the blog there today, hopefully.
Awesome.
Brandon, tell me a little bit about your competition history. Give me a couple of highlights that when you look back like that, and that was something that you really think fondly of.
I think I had a lot of early success. I think that's one thing that kind of helped me along the way is I wasn't like straight out of the gate like beating everybody up, but for instance, I won my very first wrestling match, and that kind of set a tone that I can do it, and then I wasn't able to wrestle anymore at some point, so I started doing judo. I won my first judo match, and actually before the match, I didn't know the rules very well. I was talking to one of the referees, and he literally told me, you're probably going to lose. You don't know what you're doing. And I was like, oh, okay, we'll see about that. And, of course, I was young. I was, overconfident and stuff. But, I won that match. So, again, it kind of set the tone that, I'm able to do this. And then, kind of the same thing happened in jiu-jitsu. I won my very first jiu-jitsu match. I won my very first black belt match. I won my first match that I ever had in Brazil, so I had a lot of, that's what I mean when I say early success. And I think that helped me just to kind of, as I said, set the tone to let me know that I was capable of doing it. I was not an aggressive child. I was very, very shy and very, I just wasn't very athletic, and I wasn't very, I always played sports. My dad and my brothers kind of got me involved. I did soccer and stuff like that. But as far as jiu-jitsu goes, I think that's one thing that helped me out. And so the first kind of big victory I had, even though it was second place, was I got second in the Pan Ams as a purple belt, which is really a huge deal for me at the time. This is really before they had the World Championships in America. It was always in Brazil. So Pan Ams was kind of, in a way, that was the biggest tournament in the U.S. It was kind of like the Worlds in the U.S. So I got second there as a purple belt in 2005. And, man, that was really, really huge, And then I also had I won the U.S. Open 2 times, which, again, it used to be a very big tournament. It's still pretty big, but that's not as big as maybe it used to be. And, back then, this is 2006, I think, there just weren't as many competition opportunities. So that was a pretty big tournament, and I was really happy about that. And then, of course, I won Nogi Worlds twice, 2010 and 2011. I won the European Championships in 2013. I won the Masters World Championships in 2014. And I think those are kind of the big, the major highlights so far.
Do you prefer gi or no gi, or you just up for anything? I
always did both, I started off wrestling. So, literally probably the first 3 years of jiu-jitsu, I hated the gi. Even though I'd done some judo in between that time too, but I came from wrestling. So I was always kind of like, man, if I didn't have this gi on, I would do this to you and this kind of thing. And, but eventually I kind of warmed up to it. And then of course, eventually I really liked it. And so I always competed in both, when I first started competing, the early 2000s and stuff, there just wasn't a whole lot of tournaments, so they had kind of, it was easier to get a no-gi fight than it was to get a gi fight, because you could go up to maybe Grappler's Quest or even like a Naga or something like that, and you could just enter the advanced division. So, it was anybody with 5 years and above experience. So it might be blues or purples or brown and blacks too, but it was kind of easier to get no-gi experience. So I think overall I have a pretty good 50-50 competition experience as far as no-gi and gi. But I like both. I think everyone should train both, really. It's going to give you a better overall theoretical understanding of how to do jiu-jitsu, because you're going to have to make little adjustments. Overall, gi and no-gi, it's very similar. And there's some people that have 2 completely different systems, what they do, gi and no-gi. There's certain people out there that if you look at them in a gi match, they look like a completely different person in a no-gi match. And I'm the farthest thing from that. I want my jiu-jitsu to be as identical and as applicable as possible, when I cross over from from one to the other. So I always kind of thought about, if I was training with the gi, how could I apply this without the gi? And even if I was training without the gi, I would think about, how can I use these same techniques with the gi? So I tried to have as much crossover as I could. I enjoy both, and I recommend everybody train both.
I hear a lot of people training one, and it seems like maybe because of the podcast that I hear more people training gi and not really wanting to do no gi. Let's just say they finally got convinced, okay, I should do this. What advice do you have to help make that transition a little bit easier?
I think the first thing you should do is, focus on the similarities. I think there's about a 20% difference, whether you're going from, particularly when you go from gi to no gi. I think that's an important point there. I think you should start with the gi and transition to no gi. I know there's a lot of, kind of controversy about that, but I really think that's the best way to learn. The gi slows things down, and it forces you to be a bit more technical. People can hold you easier. You have a lot more attack and defense options. So I think, one, you should start in the gi. I understand that it's a bit uncomfortable, and we don't always see the benefit of it right away. But we're adults. We should be able to understand that there's future benefits to our present actions. And the gi really carries over like that. So I think, one, you should train in the gi and then add no gi. And then when you make that transition, think about everything that's similar. I mean, obviously, you don't need to waste time spending, thinking about how do I do an X choke without the gi. Why not just try to do an arm lock, try to do a guillotine, try to do a rear naked choke, try to do pretty much any other submission that you have in jiu-jitsu. That all applies without the gi. So that's the first thing I would do. Just figure out all the similarities. If you go into a foreign language class, like let's take Spanish, for example, one of the first things they're going to do, maybe on the first day, they're going to hand you a piece of paper, and it's going to be full of what's called a cognate. I think that's the right word. I could be wrong. But basically what it is it's all the words that are pretty much the same. Like if you're going to say, if you want to say fantastic in Spanish, it's fantastico. You know what I mean? I apologize for my accent. But there's the same kind of thing going on from gi to no gi, So focus on all those similarities so that you have a reasonable base. And then over time, you kind of fill in the stuff that's very exclusive. So the things that are exclusive to no gi, like you need to spend time to understand how the slipperiness, how the sweating, how that's going to affect things from a positive and from a negative. You know what I mean? I always hear people talk a lot about, you can't do that because you're sweaty. You can't do that because the guy's too slippery. But I rarely hear about people talk about the benefits of being slippery. You know what I mean? Like I'm able to do this more easily. I'm able to do this more easily because of the slipperiness. There's a lot of ways that we can take advantage of that to give ourselves an advantage in certain positions. So I think that's important too. You got to look at the situation as it is and just figure out the positives and the negatives. You don't need to attach an emotional, an emotional value to it. I hate this. I like this. Jiu-jitsu is jiu-jitsu. The gi game is the gi game. The no-gi game is the no-gi game. You need to look at it from the outside and hone in on, the similarities and also to just the benefits and drawbacks of both of them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I really like your example with this Spanish. It's more than just that because I can't understand Spanish when I hear it, but let's just say I 100% do gi only. I could still watch a no-gi match and understand basically what's going on. It's not that much different.
Exactly.
That's a great way for students to kind of take that thing that's making them nervous or maybe that apprehension about training the other one, whether it's gi or no gi, and just say, I already know most of this. Let's just go on the mat and have a good time.
That's right. And I think it's important, too, that, I understand if people, like, let's say you're a competitor, you know what I mean? Like, you need to have goals. You need to have specific goals. Like, the more specific, the better. Like, I want to win this tournament by this date with this submission, something like that. And, whether you do it or not, that's not the point. The point is if you have those goals, it's going to make your training much more focused. So, if you want to be a gi competitor, you know what I mean? And let's say you're training full time and you're training 13 gi classes a week, right? Adding a 14th class it's probably not going to help you. You're going to get kind of diminishing returns. You know what I mean? But if you added, say, a wrestling class or a no-gi jiu-jitsu class, then because it's so different, it's easy to draw some insight from those things. And you can actually benefit quite a bit from doing that. Now, if you're only training 3 times a week and you want to be a world champion, okay, you need to add on gi class 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right? But if you've already got all that in there, you know, then adding something to mix it up that's going to force you to get out of your comfort zone and also to make you, you know, to make you deal with adjustments, right? I think that's very important. So even if you wanted to be a gi world champion, I think it's valuable to train no gi once a week. You know what I mean? It's going to help you. It's going to get you out of that comfort zone, put you in some uncomfortable situations, and that's always good. You know, I was reading I can't remember the book. I apologize, but it was talking about like the success of, I think it was the Brazilian soccer team, their football team. And they started studying and kind of looking around why there are consistently so many great players coming out of Brazil. And of course, like, okay, soccer is really popular in Brazil, but you know what? Soccer is popular everywhere in the world. Okay. Why are these people specifically having more success than a lot of other countries? And what they concluded was it wasn't that the Brazilians were playing more soccer. They were actually playing a sport called futsal, which is like a condensed version of soccer. It's indoor, but it's even smaller than indoor.
Yeah.
So it's like a really small court. So what happens is they were playing a lot of this futsal. So they were getting a very, very high amount of time with like ball handling.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're in a soccer game, you know, like a soccer field is huge, right? And, you know, you might play a whole soccer game. And if you're a fullback or even like a midfielder, I mean, you're going to have a very limited number of touches on that ball. But if you're playing futsal, right, you're going to have like more touches in a single game than you might have in a whole season of a regular soccer game, right? So what they said was the amount of time you had with the ball, that was the most important. And then you're able to adapt to the rule set that you play under, whether it was futsal or whether it was indoor soccer or whether it was, regular soccer. So I think that's important to understand that there's a controversy like, why would I train without the gi? Why would I train with the gi if I want to get better without the gi? Well, there are a number of examples of doing something that's different to get benefits in another area. So if you want to be a world champion in the gi, I don't suggest that you train, 15 no-gi classes. But putting one into your training schedule, I think can be very beneficial. In a wrestling class too, or a judo class, a sambo class, just something different. It can be very beneficial.
Yeah. Was that, could that book have been The Talent Code? Have you read that book?
Yes, maybe. Because I've read that book.
Okay. It sounds familiar. And the big deal is you're constantly in contact with the ball, and there's always somebody close to you trying to take the ball, or you're getting way more. It's kind of like positional sparring, but just
sure, exactly.
It's just great training. And yes, they're not playing this soccer in a tiny room when they go compete, but it's like a tool. It's like drilling guard passing, or drilling your escapes.
Exactly. Which most people don't do enough of that either in their jiu-jitsu training. All they want to do is live train. And just like if you play a game of soccer every day, you're going to get better at soccer, but that's like the slowest way to get better. You need to be doing, specific training. Just like when you were a kid and you played Little League baseball or, Little League Pee Wee football, you didn't just show up, the coach picked a team, and you played a game. It was always like you developed individual skills, and then at the end of the week, you played a game. And jiu-jitsu is no different. You need to be doing that positional training that you mentioned. You need to be working on specific areas, and then at the end of the week, you go to a tournament, right? Most times you get enough live training just from going to class, and any sort of positional training you can put in is going to be highly beneficial.
Yeah, and sometimes I think most schools really don't do a ton of that. They typically, you come in, you warm up, you learn a couple techniques, and then you spar. That's where I think you could take your own development in your own hands and say, while I'm sparring, I'm going to have these goals in mind and work on this thing and really focus less on winning the sparring match and focus more on developing that sweep or recovering from.
Man, you really hit the nail on the head. Like, that is the tremendous advice. I think I can't remember the year that I started doing that, having like specific class goals, but I do remember that it was around like 2007 or something like that, where I would go in. I was always drilling on my own time. I was always doing positional training on my own time. But then when I would go to class, the goal would just be try to use what I've been practicing. But when I limited it to even more, like, okay, on Monday, I can only do the triangle as a submission. So no matter where I'm at, I can't use any other submission except the triangle. And then on Tuesday, I have to finish from the back. So no matter where I'm at, I have to, if I want to finish, I have to find my way to the back, and then I can finish. Or, I'm going to start every match from side control and begin there. Or I'm only going to pass to the left no matter what. So when I started making those real specific class goals, I had the biggest jump in my ability. I had the biggest jump in my the fastest kind of learning curve. So that is hard to do discipline-wise. However, it is incredibly beneficial. And like you mentioned, it's not about winning the training session. Nobody's giving out, or no school that I've been to is giving out trophies and medals for who won the training match. And actually, most gyms, it's very, it's very rude to kind of talk about the specifics of the training match. Like, I submitted this guy, I tapped that guy. That's pretty rude, because it's practice. It's not competition. It's not fight. It's practice. And the goal should be to get better. I constantly tell my students, like, look, if your goal is to win, you're naturally going to, over time, you're going to end up avoiding people who beat you, right? And that's going to affect your learning curve. And then over time, the more you avoid them, the more, other people you're going to start avoiding. And before you know it, you're just avoiding everybody, right? And then you're not learning anything. But if you focus on getting better, you're going to get better. If you get better, you're going to win. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And it's nice to throw out that part of the ego where I don't want to roll with this guy because he's going to smash me and beat me. But you could also roll with people who aren't maybe as technically as sound as you and specifically work towards a goal or something that you're not really that good at yet, or maybe they're good at defending and have a good role with somebody who you could smash. But yeah, making.
Well, I think you can utilize your training setting. I think most people don't utilize their training setting very well. If you come from a school that's full of black belts, it's going to be like, I don't know if you've ever heard of this analogy before, but if you had like a sculptor, like when he looks at, let's say a rock or a hunk of copper or whatever he's gonna mold, he sees the finished product, and the way that he thinks about the way the statue is created or the sculpture is created is he's taking away the excess. The sculpture was always there. He was just taking away the excess. So if you're training in a room that's full of 10 black belts or however many, what happens is if you don't quit, what's going to happen is all the excess is going to get removed, and the only things that are going to work is what's going to get spit out the other side. And so you're going to be, you're going to have good jiu-jitsu just by kind of default, because if you continue to do things that don't work, you're just going to get crushed and you're going to end up getting unmotivated and you're probably going to quit. But if you, over time, you kind of learn, don't do this, do that, you're kind of molded by just the class, right? But if you're not in that environment, if you're in an environment like most schools where you have a mix of whites and blues and purples and a couple of browns and some blacks, you have to be you got to be a lot smarter with your training. So not only do you have to have those class goals that we talked about a minute ago and the long-term goals too, but you also need to, home in on people at the school that are particularly good at certain things. If somebody's a purple belt, they're going to have something in their arsenal that's basically black belt level. Maybe it's their closed guard, or maybe it's their open guard, or maybe it's their side control attack. They're going to have something that they've been doing since they were a white belt, which means they've been doing it for at least 4, 5, 6 years. And so, what I would always do in that situation is maybe one day during the week when I would come up against that person, I would just try to jump right into that strength and just try to get better at it, right? Just go right into their money game and just try to deal with it. But then another day during the week, I would try to avoid it. I would learn how to avoid it. If somebody was really good at De La Riva, the first day I would meet them, I would just stand up, give it to them, and then go to work trying to break it down and pass. But on that second day, I would stay on my knees. I wouldn't even. It's important to learn how to avoid positions. As much as it's important to learn how to deal with them. In a competition, you want to give yourself the best chance to win. So if you know somebody has a particular skill set, the easiest way to beat that is to avoid it. And I'm not talking about stalling. What I'm talking about is, again, if we're talking about De La Riva, if you know how to pass on your knees as well as on your feet, then it's very simple to select the pass on the knees and start pounding that into the guy, as opposed to standing up. If you only have one way to pass, then you're kind of at the mercy of your opponent's strengths. But if you have, stand-up pass and a pass on the knees, you're able to select the best strategy, and then you're going to increase your chances of winning. So it's important we need to learn how to deal with problems, and we also need to kind of learn to sidestep and get out of the way also.
Yeah, man, you're saying a lot of great stuff there. Even standing up on your knees, and then also left or right, because like with De La Riva, is a great example. A lot of people can't De La Riva the other side, and if you're passing,
that's right. Most people can't.
It's really a lot of different ways to get that riddle solved.
Yeah, I think the easiest way to think about it for me is that you always need to have two ways. Now you can apply that just let's call it the rule of two. You can apply that as big or as little as you like. You know what I mean? You can get as specific or as general as you like. You know what I mean? You always got to have that rule of two. Otherwise, people are going to be able to overcompensate. If you can only pass to the right, people are just going to double up all their defense there, and you're never going to pass. But if you're able to pass both sides, not only are you able to take advantage of their overreaction, but it's not twice as hard to defend. It's like 4 times as hard. It's like exponential, if that makes sense, So you got to have that at least two ways, passing standing and on the knees, right and to the left, over the guard and under the guard, around the legs and through the legs, so, and you can apply that to the bottom, to the stand-up game, all over the place. So you can never just have one answer. You know what I mean? If you're looking at a takedown, if you're really good at taking somebody down when they put their right leg forward, well, I mean, what are you going to do when their left leg is forward? So again, you got to have two answers to the question, right? The guy's going to stand right leg forward, he's going to stand left leg forward. You don't necessarily have to do the same technique on both sides, but you need to be able to do a technique on both sides. And that's in general, that's what people do. There's some people that can do both, one technique on both sides, but generally people are going to, if they are ambidextrous, they usually have different techniques on each side, depending on, because you want to implement like your power hand or your strong side. So like a real simple example of this is if like what a pummel pass is from the half guard.
Sure.
Yeah. So let's see, if you have a right-handed person, you're going to do a pummel pass, to your left, which is your opponent's right, because you're using your right arm to pummel.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the action hand, right? And if you get put in a left half guard situation, okay, you're not going to pummel with your left arm. What you're going to do is you're going to cross face with your right arm, make the guy flat and go to the mount, or maybe step your leg out. So you're attacking right and left, but both times you're using your strong side, right? Like wrestling is a good example of this as well. If you have a right-handed wrestler, when you're up against somebody who's also right leg forward, you're going to do double leg and you're going to do high crotch to the right. And then if somebody comes out opposite stance, in this case left, you're going to do a single leg. But each time you're shooting off your lead leg and you're using your right hand to initiate. So it's an important idea that we learn how to apply our strong side to both sides of our opponent, right? That's a little bit easier, I think, than learning how to do arm lock on the left, arm lock on the right. You're going to do arm lock on the right, you're going to do arm lock on the left because your hips are moving the same way each time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I think it really helps people understand that, okay, I do this guard pass this way. Now, I can't get that to work going the other way. It's just so my body won't make it work. but you can do something else that way and find something that works with the way your body is. And that really helps understand as far as developing different pathways to pass the guard or to get a submission.
Definitely.
I'm looking at your the blog portion of your website there, and you talk a little bit about general training versus specific training and having different ways of really getting better at jiu-jitsu. Could you maybe describe that a little bit?
Sure. I think that goes back to the rule of two. You know, you need to be general and specific. You need to have two things. So when you're doing jiu-jitsu, if you want to take jiu-jitsu seriously, you're going to be working two systems constantly, right? So you need to have specific. So what I mean is, I ask this to my students all the time, like when they ask me, "Oh, Professor, how can I get better?" So I tell them to be more specific, and they don't always understand what I mean. So I always ask a question like this. Imagine you're in a hypothetical situation where you've been kidnapped by some sort of evil billionaire, right? And he puts you in this arena, and he says, okay, you get to pick what guard you want to start the match in. If you can sweep him or submit him, you live. If he passes, you die, right? So what guard would you pick? And most people are like, oh, I don't know. I'll be on top. So you can't do that. You can't do that. The billionaire says you got to be on bottom. So what I mean is you need to have some big guns. You need to have some techniques that, you want to be known for. You want to really, really, really develop. Like when somebody thinks of your name, what techniques do you want attached to your name? Does that make sense? And if you don't know an opponent, right? If you don't know any kind of info on your opponent, you're going to throw these big techniques at them just as hard as you can. So that's specific. You know what I mean? Every little bit of extra time you have, you want to spend on developing these particular techniques. So let's say you want it to be a arm lock expert, right? Well, you might start off with something simple like the arm lock from the guard, right? And then you might realize that, I'm spending all this time doing an arm lock from the guard. I want to also learn how to do arm lock from the top, from side control, from mount. So you want to find yourself in that arm lock position in as many ways as possible because you're building up a lot of experience in that. And so even if somebody has more experience than you, overall, you can develop more experience in that specific arm lock position and kind of overwhelm them, So you want to think about just some 3, 4, 5 techniques. I always tell someone, pick out a guard pass, pick out a takedown, pick out a sweep, pick out a submission, and just any extra time you have, you want to focus on those things. So again, when somebody thinks of your name, they're going to think of those techniques. Like, man, that guy always passes this way, always submits me with this. So that's specific, right? But you also have to think about general too. You have to also get good at just jiu-jitsu overall, right? Because you have to be good enough with your general jiu-jitsu to survive, and also you got to survive if you get taken out of your favorite area, and you got to be good enough to funnel people back into that specific area, right? So if you're like a closed guard thug, if you get caught in the open guard, you need to be able to survive. You need to be able to hold the guy off until you're able to suck him into your closed guard, right? So that's general. You got to just get good at jiu-jitsu overall, right? And then over time, those systems are going to overlap more and more and more and more and more until you have a very good system where you are very, very rarely outside of your specific areas. But it starts with just a few techniques, kind of cornerstone or big gun type techniques, and then you need to be building up your general jiu-jitsu as well. So that's a good way to break up your training schedule too. You can do, if you're training 4 days a week, 2 of those days you could limit yourself to just doing your specific techniques, and then the other 2 days you could just come to class and try to do what you're learning in class. You know what I mean? Just try to do anything except those specific techniques to kind of build up your general jiu-jitsu. So I think that's a key concept that people kind of don't understand. I'll catch students that are blue belts or purple belts that, even though they train pretty well, they really don't know what they're doing. And when I say they don't know what they're doing, is they can't explain it. They can show you, but they don't kind of have like a system built in. Like, when I'm here, I want to do this. When I'm here, I want to do this. When I'm here, I want to do this. And it's important that we kind of analyze our jiu-jitsu if we want to be able to really take it to the next level. And I think the first thing to do is understanding that kind of general versus specific training methodology, and that you have those two systems kind of working together at all times.
Early on, I mean, there's a gap between those. There's your specific game that you're really excelling in your general game, where you're trying to just pick up jiu-jitsu overall.
Yep.
Is the goal kind of to get your general game to funnel the pathway towards a specific game, or is just to learn?
Yeah.
Okay.
Particularly in the beginning, your general jiu-jitsu is all about surviving when you get out of your specific area and then funneling the person back in, right? So again, let's say you want to have the best closed guard in the world, right? Well, your open guard has to be good enough that you can pull people in. There's lots of ways people can keep you out of the closed guard. They can stand up, they can squat down, put the knee in the middle. There's a few things they can do. Or what if they pass your guard and you're in side control? Your side control defense needs to be good enough you're not going to get submitted, and your guard recovery needs to be good enough that you're actually able to recover the guard. So in the beginning, all that general jiu-jitsu is doing is enabling you to survive and then funnel people back into that specific area. But over time, because you're working on the general jiu-jitsu as well, you're going to kind of fill in the blanks, So over time, you will develop an actual open guard, right? And you realize that you can't only have the closed guard. You're going to need a complementary open guard, whether it's spider guard or de la Riva or kind of the classic hand in the collar guard. So over time, like I said, those two areas, general and specific, they're going to overlap more and more and more and more until you have a good game from everywhere, right? That's when you become black belt. You know what I mean? You have a pretty good game from everywhere, right? You're able to pass the half guard. You're able to pass the closed guard. You're able to pass spider guard. You're able to, submit people from side control, from mount, from knee on belly, from the back. But in the beginning, it doesn't start like that. You can't learn everything all at once. So you want to kind of get some key techniques in place that are going to kind of be your go-to. And then over time, you're building up that general as well, right? So in the beginning, it's just about surviving and funneling people back into that specific. But over time, you're building up that general as well. So in the beginning, your open guard is just to get people into the closed guard. But as time goes on, your open guard is going to get better and better and better. All of a sudden, if you can't get to the closed guard, it's not such a big deal because your open guard is good too, right?
Yeah. I'm thinking, as we're talking about this, I'm thinking about offense. But do you also find that developing a specific type of defense is also part of the process?
Yeah, defense is very important. I hate to quote a football analogy, but, offense wins games and defense wins championships, So that applies to jiu-jitsu as well. People rarely drill defense, and I would highly recommend that you do that. You need to understand positional defense, submission defense. That's very, very important. It's pretty. People usually just, I'll develop the defense through rolling. But again, that's the slowest way to do it. If you spend a little bit of time, starting in an arm lock position, starting in a triangle position. I used to do this a lot, actually. And you got to start in a bit of a, not neutral position, but let's say I wanted to get better at my triangle game. To have the guy lock the triangle in completely and then escape, it's going to be really hard. And you're not going to have a lot of success. But if you start with, the guy has, your head and arm isolated, and he just has his ankles crossed, and then you go from there, you're still going to get submitted quite a bit, but you're going to definitely have a chance to get out. So that general specific is going to apply there too. You need to have a kind of a go-to. So an easy way to think about it is if we look at submissions from the guard as like three main categories, you're going to have arm lock, triangle, omoplata, right? I think most people will agree the easiest one to escape from is omoplata. You're going to have more time to escape. It's not as fast as the other ones. And you have more mobility. You can move a lot more. So you have all three of those escapes, right? But start with the omoplata escape, right? Learn how to do that. And then learn how to funnel the person who's attacking with the triangle, who's attacking with the arm lock. Learn how to put them into the omoplata. Like obviously if you could escape all at once, you would. But if you feel a triangle coming, you can turn your arm down, like thumb down, and kind of turn your head out of the way. And 9 times out of 10, the person's going to take that omoplata. And now you're back into your good escape, and you learn how to escape. The same thing with an arm lock. You can kind of, as people are starting to set it up, you're going to see it coming at least a little bit, and you're able to kind of give them the omoplata, right? Which you'd rather give them nothing. But again, if you have to choose from giving them the triangle, giving them the arm lock, or giving them the omoplata, most people are going to agree the omoplata is going to be easier to defend than the other two, right?
Yeah, that's an interesting way to kind of look at escaping things. You've also helped a lot of people when dealing with larger opponents. You've got a DVD series out for that. Does this translate well into that attitude as far as having a specific game and a general game and dealing with those bigger people?
Yeah, I think it always applies.
Okay.
A big guy is going to get you out of your game probably more than a guy your size, because you're not going to be able to kind of, use your athletic ability to kind of stay in your specific area. So a big guy is going to have a much better chance of getting you off your game than a smaller guy would. And so again, you're going to have that general jiu-jitsu. You're going to have to have good defense. When you're training with somebody bigger, your guard's going to get passed. You're going to get put in side control. You're going to get mounted. You're going to get taken down. So it's even more important there. You have to be able to survive and funnel people back into those good spots. And if you just have one shot and then you miss it, it's over. I think that the idea of having those specific techniques, something else I want to say just along those lines, is that it really brings like context to your jiu-jitsu. So in the beginning, jiu-jitsu looks like just like a complete scramble all the time. It's like on the old cartoons when you'd see the Tasmanian devil like spinning around. That's kind of what a white belt sees, I think, or even people higher level. You see that, and it looks like everything is just a one big scramble. And the more and more you train, you realize everything is actually very calculated. So when you have just one technique, let's say an arm lock, right? All of a sudden, it makes everything else is going to make more sense. So if you want to do arm lock from mount, it makes sense that you need to learn to pass the guard, because that's how you get to the mount, right? Or it makes sense that you learn how to do a scissor sweep from the closed guard, because if you can only do the arm lock from the mount, you can see very easily like, oh, well, if I'm on bottom, that's how I get to the top, the mount, and now I can use my favorite technique, the arm lock from the mount. So when you have one or two techniques that you're good at, it all of a sudden it brings everything else into focus. It allows you to realize why everything else is important, right? I think that is a good way to look at it as well.
We're talking a lot about training and getting better. Tell me your current thoughts on, I guess, jiu-jitsu today or the different competitions that are out there.
I'm really glad that there's so many different competition opportunities. I think that is awesome. When I was first starting to compete, there was very few competitions. I would have to drive hours and hours to get to a competition, and then there was one guy to fight. It was kind of crazy. And now there's competitions like every weekend. Pretty much, if you're willing to drive a little bit, you can find a competition almost everywhere. And there's always a lot of talk about this person's better, that person's better. And I think people kind of neglect, the rule set of each style. You know what I mean? Like, you have people competing in non-IBJJF events, and they go up against a guy who's competing full-time in IBJJF, and let's say the guy outside the IBJJF, he wins, right? So instantly people say, oh, he's better. The IBJJF sucks. And I think if you evaluate what generally happens in those situations, that's not the case, right? A lot of times when you have somebody that's very accredited in the IBJJF, when they cross over to another rule set, the way that they lose is typically in ways that are not allowed in the IBJJF, right? So there's a lot of people crossing over from IBJJF to, let's say, the Eddie Bravo Invitational. And a lot of times, if those guys lose, they're losing in the overtime round, which they don't do in IBJJF, right? And then conversely, if you have people that are all about like submission only, right? If they cross over into the IBJJF world, they're not getting submitted. They're losing on points. They're losing on ref decision. Well, they don't have that in their rule set. So I think it's important when you're evaluating, who's better, or, just when you're talking about people's level of jiu-jitsu, I think it's important that it's always going to be rule set specific. Always. It's human nature to try to get an advantage, when you're in competition with somebody. So it's natural that you learn, you adapt your style to the rule set. So when you have these people crossing over, right, if they just get blown out of the water, okay, the other guy was better. But, if somebody crosses over in either direction and they end up losing, let's evaluate what happened. If they lost in a way that is illegal or not allowed in the style they come from, well, then it's harder to say, like, this person's better than that person. So I think it's important for people to realize that, the rule set is important. The rule set matters. And you have to take that into account when you're kind of talking about these levels of jiu-jitsu. And speaking of rules, I think it's important that people learn the rules of jiu-jitsu when they're training. I come across people all the time who've been training for years and years, and they don't know the point system in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. They don't know the positional strategy in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And that's really important for your learning process, man. You need to have that stuff. If every school generally kind of has, we're like an IBJJF school, or we're like a Naga school, or submission only school. So every school kind of has a general rule set that they follow. And it's important to learn that rule set. Otherwise, you're going to create a lot of tension when you're training. It's going to create some animosity between training partners, because one person is going to say they won and the other person says, no, you didn't. Right. But if you're using a particular set of rules and the person scores the points, and the drill for the training was you got to score points, if the person doesn't know the point system and then the other person says, I beat you, I scored points, they get mad about it. Right. So I think it's important to one, understand that rule sets are going to dictate the fighting style. And also too, that, you need to understand the rules in general to be able to really reach your highest potential.
Yeah. Could you maybe give me an example of what you're talking about, like as far as like frustrations between training partners or within a gym? Like maybe not one specifically happened to you or your training partners, but like just help me out understand how understanding the rules can cause conflict.
So, something we do at our academy all the time is we do just guard passing drills, So we'll start in a regular guard position. It might be closed guard, it might be half guard, it might be De La Riva guard. The person on bottom has to sweep or submit their partner. The person on top has to pass, right? It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
We do it almost every day. We do it, right? And so, some people just kind of never catch on, and I really don't understand why that is. But what will happen is somebody who doesn't understand those goals. Let's say the person doesn't understand what a guard pass is. So the person on top passes the guard. He solidifies, let's say, side control or mount. And then the person on top is like, I won, and the other person doesn't understand. Maybe they don't get into an argument right there, but they don't understand. They're like, in their head, they're like, no, you didn't. But then they go to the end of the line and then they come back again. You know what I mean? But over time, that kind of builds up some animosity. Also, like what submissions are legal, so you might have a white belt trying to do a submission that's illegal for his belt level against somebody else. And again, that creates animosity too. It just creates a, kind of a bad training environment, I think. So when everyone knows the rules, when everyone knows what's allowed and what's not allowed, there's less arguments on who won. Even though, winning isn't the goal, we're still, men. We still have egos. As much as we want to try to put it to the side, they're still there. So I think that when the rules are very clear to everybody, you're just going to have less confrontation. And the less confrontation you have, the harder you can train and the more beneficial the training is going to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah. You mentioned that some people, they go from one tournament into another one and they maybe not do as well, and how big of an effect the rules are. Kind of reminded me of the gi versus nogi thing, as in, speaking Spanish, a lot of it is still good. A lot of your gi still works nogi, but that 20% actually matters, and that
Exactly.
the 20% rule change is a big deal if you don't address it.
It's a big deal, exactly, and I think you've seen that a lot of times. Actually, I can't really think of a specific example, but I mean, I've seen it, where, and I don't know if it's a thing with the people crossing over. If they don't think it's a big deal and they didn't prepare, or if they did prepare but they just kind of got out. The other person has more experience in that rule set. Sometimes it looks like they didn't prepare at all. I've seen some people get pretty badly injured when they go to a tournament where slams are legal, like slams from the guard.
Yeah.
And they just assumed that slams were illegal because in general they are, right? And then the person lifted them up, slammed them, and they got hurt really bad. But, I mean, whose fault is that? That's the competitor's fault. He should have known the rules.
Yeah, that's
right.
I think another one that we see maybe is the overtime rules, and you start in a certain position and the timer starts, and just you can almost see it like this person didn't train that position for overtime at all. That's frustrating. It's like clearly this was a possibility to be at this one particular submission or this position with somebody and deal with that with a timer going. And if you're doing that type of a tournament, you need to be training that specifically.
Man, I guarantee, like those guys doing the Eddie Bravo Invitational, every single day, they're going through those overtime positions.
Yeah.
Guaranteed. Every single day, they're going through those overtime positions. And I guarantee that a lot of times their strategy on people with a really high IBJJF credentials, I guarantee their strategy is to, I'm not going to say survive, but kind of drag the match into those overtime rounds because they know they have an advantage there. So I think if you watch a lot of those matches, you can see people being less than 100% aggressive during the initial match time. And then when they go into that overtime, it's like a different person.
Yeah. Wow.
And that's an effective strategy if you want to win. You know what I mean? Like, you need to use the rules to your advantage. You're going to, if you're a competitor, you're going to meet people in competition who are better than you, and you still have to find a way to beat them.
Yeah. And you kind of, on your blog there, talk about dealing with somebody who has more experience than you or somebody who's technically better. And
yeah.
How is that?
One of the ways you deal with that is that general and specific.
Okay.
That's one way that you beat somebody who's more experienced than you. If I'm going to go against somebody, let's say I'm a blue belt who's trained for 3 years, right? If I go up against a brown belt who's been trained for 10 years, if I just look at that, just those facts right there, it's very easy to get overwhelmed. Like, man, the guy's been training 3 times as long as I have. There's no way that I can beat him. Well, yes, if you look at it from just that perspective. But if you start breaking it down into positions, so how much time, how much experience does he have, defending this position or being in this position? And what you're going to find is that somebody doesn't have, if their total amount of experience is 8 years, they don't have 8 years experience in every single position. They don't have 8 years from the stand-up. They don't have 8 years passing the closed guard, being in the closed guard, using the closed guard, passing the De La Hiva, being in De La Hiva. It's all going to be different. You know what I mean? Like, if you were adding up the number of hours they spent in each of those positions, it's going to be very different. They're going to have way more hours in certain areas, and they're going to have way less in other areas. Generally, when people train, they're going to gravitate towards what they like and what they're good at, and that's going to create inconsistencies in their experience across all the positions of jiu-jitsu. So if you're somebody who has less experience, you need to hone in on places that people generally don't have a lot of experience. Like, you see it in ADCC all the time. You have really high-level jiu-jitsu people. Sometimes they're losing to kind of maybe like a guy who definitely has jiu-jitsu experience, but he's more of like a wrestler or like some other kind of grappling style, and he's able to take him down. They get 2 points, or he's able to force them to pull guard, and they're good enough on top and on the ground that the person is not able to score on them or submit them, and then they win by 2 points or they win by -point, And if you compare their overall experience one guy is vastly more experienced. But if you isolate it into who's more experienced in the stand-up game, right, then all of a sudden the overall experience doesn't matter. I think you saw that with like the Meow brothers too, and the Mendez brothers a little bit as well, with like this Barambola position and leg drag position. The Meows have been doing the Barambola for 5-6 years. I don't know how long, right? There was nobody who was putting in an equal number of hours defending that position as they were putting in utilizing that position. And you saw the results when they hit the scene. They were just destroying everybody. They beat a bunch of people that had more overall experience than they did. However, they were able to bring the match into a specific area where that overall experience does not matter. It doesn't matter how good your attack from side control is if you can never get to side control.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Your example earlier on of the blue belt who was trying to compete against the brown belt, if you match up your two general games, the blue belt will probably lose most or all of the 100%. Time. But if he's able to get his specific game and get access to that, not be choke from mount or choke from back, but have a part of his game that he can get to that's really strong, and match that up with a general style of that brown belt's game, he might do all right.
That's right. And he can even beat him, And I mean, I think this has played out a number of times. It's played out a bunch of times. And, I talk to my students about that a lot. They kind of ask me, we have a lot of guys that are competing in Masters division. And so they come up against some kind of legendary figures or just people who've had a lot more experience than they have. And, I tell them, you gotta get that specific, man. You got to find areas where people are lacking. And there's a couple of areas where most people are lacking, like takedowns in jiu-jitsu. Most people don't train takedowns, or, a lot of them don't. And so that's one area that almost everybody can improve and give themselves an advantage over most other people, And you can also kind of make small changes to regular positions. Like, Leandro Lowe came out on the scene and kind of was crushing everybody, passing the De La Hiva, going right to the Margarita pass, like driving his knee in the middle. And if you watch, he does it differently than other people. Like, not that different. But for instance, most people, if they're in like a right De La Hiva, their right hand is going to be on the collar. And then they're going to drive the knee in, and either they'll keep the collar or they're going to pummel, right?
Okay, yeah.
Leandro Lowe rarely grabs the collar. He almost always grabs the pants on the De La Hiva leg, right? So he has like a double pant grip. So that pant grip, he's always pushing the De La Hiva leg off. He's always pushing it off, always, 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 always. And then when the person kind of gets frustrated, he drives that knee in and then pummels immediately, right? So he's changed. I don't know, just one grip has always changed. But it's different enough that it takes people out of their general game. Like that, if you're used to people always grabbing your collar and you're able to control their leg very effectively, controlling the heel, your leg is inside theirs for the De La Hiva, you kind of develop a style that's based around that. And then when somebody comes out and they do things slightly differently, it makes a huge effect, So again, he might have been, I know he's beat people that have had more overall experience than him. And a lot of times in his case, I think it's because he does things just differently enough that it causes some pretty major problems for people.
It all comes back to the way you're training and developing your game, and I think that's been a big lesson today as far as getting a specific part of your game to a very high level.
Yeah. Yeah, you want to have depth in jiu-jitsu, not just width. You don't just want to have a lot of techniques. You want to have a lot of knowledge with a few techniques. You want to have depth. That's the key. And then over time, you develop width as well.
We mentioned briefly at the beginning, you have a website, justgipants.com. What was the inspiration for that?
Well, I mean, I realized one day that I had 10 gi tops and 2 pairs of gi pants. And, I realized you couldn't order. You generally had to buy a whole gi to get a pair of pants. And so I was like, man, this is ridiculous. So I just started, me and a friend of mine, John Briggs, we started the justgipants.com and just like the name says, we sell pants. We also sell like grappling tights as well, just the leggings, and we sell like replacement rope, stretchy rope. A lot of gi pants come with like a regular, like a non-rope drawstring.
Yeah.
So we sell that too. It just makes it much easier to tie and stuff. But yeah, it's just there for when you rip your pants, but you don't want to buy a whole new gi. You just get a pair of pants, man. So we ship worldwide. We always have free shipping in America, and I think it fills a nice little niche.
Yeah, and you've got several colors: white, blue, black, and then I'm looking. What's the
6-month guarantee?
What's the difference between modern and classic? I don't understand.
The modern is ripstop, and the classic is just the classic cotton. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm sure
whatever your gi pant needs are, we can take care of them.
I would think so. If you just, it's kind of like the specific thing. Nail gi pants.
Exactly.
Like, you've got it nailed. Like, if you need gi pants, just gipants.com.
We got it. We got it. And, if you like it, I have a Facebook page for justgipants.com where I'm dropping hilarious jiu-jitsu memes on the daily. And I'm also putting out, some instruction, not just some like basic technique videos, some breakdown videos. And I post up when I make new blog posts on there. So if you're interested, check it out at Facebook, justgipants.com. I also have a YouTube channel, justgipants.com, where I post up some technique videos, and again, the blog too.
All right. We'll put those links in the show notes. Anything that's coming out or around the corner?
Yeah, I'm actually working on a book. Me and Stephen Kesting are working on a book coming out, and we're basically, the last DVD I did, we're putting everything in book form. I really, really, really dig books. I think they're a great resource. DVDs are good too, but I think a book gives you something that a DVD can't. You can kind of just sit and stare at the pictures, which I think is very helpful. And it's kind of handy to carry around. You can put it in your bag. You can keep it in your bathroom and just look at it from time to time. And so we're really laying out that. It's really fantastic so far. And I've also got a lot of my thoughts in there about jiu-jitsu and training. And I would highly recommend it to anybody who, likes jiu-jitsu, who likes my personal style. It's going to be called, we don't have a name yet, but you can go on my Facebook. I'm going to announce it there when we release it. And on the justgipants.com Facebook is also we're going to announce when it comes out. So just keep your eyes open for that. Brandon Mullins, Stephen Kesting coming out with the jiu-jitsu book.
Awesome. And a lot of people are on Stephen's email list as well. I'm still sure we'll see it there too, but we'll keep our eyes peeled for that. And that's exciting. Had a blast talking with you today. Are you up for a round of Family Feud?
100%. Let's do it.
All right. Name something that you have in your house right now that does not work.
My laptop computer. It crashes like every 15 minutes.
Name something you have more of now than you did 10 years ago.
Everything jiu-jitsu related. So gi pants, books, DVDs, a lot of that stuff.
Okay. Name something you have to do when you throw a big party.
Vomit. I'll probably drink too much and throw up.
Like the preparation side of the party.
Vomit. Got to clean my system out and get ready.
Okay.
No, I'm just joking. I don't know. What I have to do if I have a big party? Ice. Plenty of ice.
Okay. Name something you have to get back to the house if you leave home without it.
Obviously, the answer is phone, but I'm going to try to think of something else.
Okay.
I'm going to say my headphones so I can check out that new edition of BJJ Brick podcast.
Oh, Brandon. Okay, last one.
Damn.
Name something
number one answer
you have to watch out for when you're walking down the street.
Random dog poop.
Wow, that's on there. Brandon, I've got your answer tallied up here.
Okay.
You got 52 out of it. You kind of had some fun with some of them, so that's good as well. I give you some bonus points for the headphones because the cell phone was a good answer for 18. I gave you that.
Yeah.
Dog poop was on there for 15 for avoiding on the streets.
Yes.
Ice, that's under food and drinks. That's 13 points. The biggest answer on that one was invite people. What do you have more than 10 years ago? Money was the biggest answer. Jiu-jitsu stuff. I guess most people don't have more jiu-jitsu stuff than did 10 years ago. Then your broken computer got you 6 points. TV, I guess.
Number one on broken.
TV. I don't know why you keep a broken TV around, but
yeah, that is weird.
But yeah, you did. You had fun with it, and that's the main thing. Oh, the biggest thing you watch out for when you're at the street is muggers and people. But you're not really worried about that, I think.
Yeah, I thought you were talking to jiu-jitsu people.
Just walk around with confidence and clean shoes. That's the main thing, right? Not stepping in any dog poop. All right, Brandon, where could somebody go if they want to get some mat time with you?
They can go to the school that I work at, Gracie, Baja, Texas. And you can also go there to meet the legend, Professor Draculino. He's also teaching there most of the time. About 80% of the time he's there, and then I'm there. We got a great group of guys there. It's in Webster, Texas, which is it's in the Houston area. You can go to the website, Gracie Baja TX.
Awesome. Well, and we've had Draculino on the show, and that was awesome, and it's good to get you on here as well. Look forward to
the man.
Yes.
He's one of the. I'll tell you what, Professor Draculino is one of the few people that you meet, and he's cooler than you expect him to be. Like usually, you kind of see people on the outside, and they're like, "Man, I bet that guy's really cool." And you meet him, you're like, "Well, he is cool, but not as cool as I thought." Professor's the opposite. You meet him, and the level you thought he was cool, he's up at least 3 or 4 notches.
Man, I wish I could pull that off for myself.
I'm definitely a letdown when you meet me in person.
Brandon, thanks so much for hopping on here with me. I had a great time.
Yeah, I enjoyed being on.
I want to thank Brandon Mullins for hopping on here. Really enjoyed the interview. He did a great job of explaining his ideas, and he's got great ideas. And the one that I kept thinking about it as I'm editing this and typing up the show notes, where you'll find all the links to the audiobooks and to Brandon's site, and to, you might need some gi pants. Go check it out on Brandon's page there. But really, the thing I kept thinking about was the example of training gi and no-gi and the differences between those. It's like learning a different language, where really most of the language is the same, but that like 20% of it's different. And so let's look at all the similarities of what you could do and then build off of that. I think that was a cool example.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this episode and it hasn't occurred to you already, if you know some smaller grapplers, a 135-pound guy or a 120-pound woman, and they're not listening to this, make sure to share it with them so they can kind of look into some of Brandon Mullins' material he's got out. He's a small guy, and over the last decade or so, he's had a little bit of success competing in the open weight division, and he knows a lot about working from that perspective, and he's really good at disseminating the information. So yeah, pass that on to anybody that might benefit from this kind of training. Yeah,
that would be a good way to help them. And really, if you're in that category of weight, you should be following Brandon Mullins. He's got so much good stuff for you to learn from. Quick shout out to our Patreon supporters. I think we'll just highlight a couple of them randomly. Craig, Rob, and Brad. Thank you, guys. And David. Why not go a little further down the list? David. People who have been some of our longer Patreon supporters there. We've been talking about the new ones. But thanks, guys. They have been pitching in a certain amount of money per episode. They say, hey, this BJJ Brick thing is dynamite. It's far out. It's
dynamite.
Dynamite.
Groovy, man.
They want to help us out. They want to help us grow the show so we can make this bigger and better for everybody else. And I know that we're helping some new people come to the mats and stay on the mats, and we're helping some people, understand more about jiu-jitsu that have been on the mats for a little while. So we're doing some different things for different people. But if this is something that you would like to see get bigger and better and stick around, and if times get tough, which they have before, Patreon has been a great tool. We send you some tokens of appreciation. We'll mail you a 5-inch BJJ Brick gi patch and a sticker. You can put it wherever you like, as long as it's something that you own and not something somebody else owns. We'll just leave that at that part.
If you put it on somebody else owns, they may actually like it, though, too.
They'll probably track down the BJJ Brick, find the Gmail account, bjjbrick@gmail.com, and send me a unfriendly letter about that sticker, which I have no idea what is happening. So put it on stuff that you have, And also, we have a private Facebook group where I might get on there and say, hey, interviewing Brandon Mullins in a couple of days. Anything you want me to ask him? And I'll get a little bit of stuff from you guys. I don't always have everybody on Facebook. Just send me an email. It's probably the easiest way to do that. Tell me, give me a link to your Facebook account, and I'll add you through that. bjjbrick@gmail.com, and I'll get you added to the private Facebook group. If you're already a member and I don't have you added, just send me a polite email telling me, hey, you forgot me or you couldn't find me. I like to be part of that private Facebook group. If you don't have Facebook, that's okay. A lot of people don't have Facebook. Anyway, just wanted to give a thanks again to our supporters. They mean a lot to us.
Definitely. We would never have the show as good as it is. I think we're getting better each and every week. We've brought Joe on. There's no way we could have afforded a superstar like Joe without the support of our Patreon supporters. So, thank each and every one of you for helping, as Byron says, keep this brick afloat.
And just so the listeners know, I came on and I did a few episodes with Gary and Byron, and they said, you want to do some more? And I said, you know what you've been paying me is not enough. You got to double that. So they did, and we've been happy ever since.
Yep. Zero doubled is zero.
Double it. I'm about ready to cut it in half.
Hey, but speaking of how Joe first got on the show, Joe is he writes articles. He has some nice articles about jiu-jitsu, and we had him on for a show, and then we had another one of his articles. We actually called in and had him talk about it. And this week we are privileged to have another one of Joe's articles, and I'll let Joe take it away.
I want to say first, if you're listening to the show, go to the Facebook page or the web page and check the article out. Not because it's a great article. I think it's okay.
It's great.
It's great.
But the image that Byron chose to use, that's exactly how I was feeling when this idea occurred to me. So it's pretty awesome. But the reality is, from time to time, you're going to find yourself going to class where the rest of the group or the curriculum has sort of diverged from what you think is ideal for you at this point. And you got to kind of make a decision. Do I maybe go to a few less classes right now, or how do I handle this? And so this article is about when the school's gearing up for competition and everybody's going at a high octane level, and maybe that's not where you're at. And what can you do to still help your teammates out and still help yourself out? And so the first thing I thought about was, I can't keep up with these guys all the time. I'm older. They're young athletes, and I'm sort of an old guy pursuing a hobby. But if we start in the position that they would like to work from in the tournament, I can handle that. And it gives them an opportunity to work directly on it. When they're just free rolling with other students at the same level, they may only get to spider guard once in a 5-minute roll. But if I know that's what they want to work from, I'll just start with in their close guard and then let them work the spider guard and let them work the sweep or submission they want to work from there. And that way I can help them out even though they're on a different level than I am from an athletic standpoint.
Yeah, that's a good way to do that. I think that sometimes people misjudge their value to the team. And you stand there in the room looking at half a dozen people who are serious competitors and I don't know, 10, 20 years younger than yourself, and you're like, man, what am I going to do here to help anybody? Might as well go home. But there is some stuff you could do for sure. And I think just positional sparring, letting them work some stuff and putting on, your best fight from those positions is a hugely valuable thing. And it changes the role for them because they're suddenly have some focused training that they're working on, which Brandon talked about a lot this episode. And so tons of value. I think that you don't want to underestimate your value to the team, even if you're not able to provide some things that you think might be the most important thing. Sometimes just the atmosphere, having a positive atmosphere. Take a white belt who is the happiest person around, laughing and having a great time. I take that person over a grumpy brown belt any day as far as someone to help me stay motivated on the mats and having a good time. And yeah, I don't know. I was a little off topic. That's kind of the way I've been flying lately. But yeah,
I don't think that was off topic there, Byron. I think a lot of people don't realize their value to the team, even if you're not as good as other people. And like Joe said, you can positionally spar and, get them in there, be in a good mood. But, and I'm speaking for Joe here, but I know Joe put in a Facebook post about this before he wrote the article. And, Joe's like, hey, I'm barely, can drag my butt to class. I'm really tired. I'm working and this and that. And, everybody's, comparing for a tournament, getting ready for a tournament and, much younger and, big time competitors. But and Joe posted that kind of like on his Facebook, but it just shows you Joe's value to the team. Like everybody all his teammates ended up posting on there. It's like, Joe, man, we're so glad you showed up. You helped us a lot. And, just an atmosphere like that, Joe gives back to those guys and they give back to Joe. It's, Byron, you were just talking about the happy guy. And when I saw those posts, I even commented to Joe even before I think he wrote this article, but I was just so impressed with, first of all, Joe thinking that he's holding his teammates down. He cares so much. But then the support of all Joe's teammates coming in and saying, hey, Joe, man, thank you so much for coming by. You helped me a lot. We wouldn't be where we are without you. And, that's just an incredible school right there, an incredible group of people who all care about each other and they all make each other better.
Yeah, and just showing up has value. You could.
Definitely.
I put 4 points in this part of the article, but you could substitute any other 4 points in here, and the end result is just showing up and showing your teammates you care about them and that you're concerned about their success and that you're part of the team and you're all working together. That in itself is enough. So, I mean, That's really what it boils down to.
Yeah, I like that point, Joe. It's just knowing that the self-worth, that you care about the others on your team, that you're there rooting them on. Like I've got a really good buddy who's a good MMA fighter, and I'm not an MMA fighter, not even close to it. But, I'm always there to support him. I go to all his fights. I buy his tickets from him. He makes me feel like I'm part of the team. And, I don't really even like to watch MMA that much, but I will never miss one of his fights. I don't care where he's fighting. I'll go and watch it. And, it's just you feel like you're part of the team. Your self-worth, you guys are both there to support each other. Your team's got your back and you have their back. Literally, Joe. Literally.
And for those of you that listened to our extra episode, which aired, I think, yesterday, if we're looking at how this works, and we used it, Byron and I used as many idioms as we could as a practical joke on Gary. This is a win-win situation. Not only are you helping your teammates out by going to class, but it will benefit you as well. You may go to a competition class and like me, you can barely drag your butt in there and you feel like you're getting a whooping, but you will get better. You're absorbing things. You're learning defense. You will get better from it. There's a dozen benefits that'll come your way. So we're talking about a genuine win-win situation here.
There you go. Yeah, and that's important for long-term success because you're not just coming to watch people train and cheering them on from the sidelines. You're actively helping them on the mats and getting them ready to help them reach a goal. And in doing so, they'll help you reach your goals as well.
Joe, what are some other ways to help some teammates out besides positional sparring and showing up and giving support?
Well, if you're like me, if you're older and you can't, you're not on the same level athletically, do what you can to give them a good round. Most of the guys that I roll with, they'd rather have a good 7 or 8 minute or whatever their regulation time is going to be when they compete. They want a good round from start to finish. And as an older guy, if that means I roll every other round or I take every third round off, whatever it takes, I want to be active from the start of the round to the end of the round. So I want to pace myself, and I don't want to spend a lot of time in stagnant positions. If I'm rolling with a white belt who is gearing up for a tournament, he can get mount, and I can just lock down my defense, and there's probably not much they're going to do. But that's not benefiting them at all. They're not going to go against a 50-year-old purple belt when they compete. They're going to go against a 22-year-old white belt who is going to be active and be moving and trying to escape the position. So I'm going to avoid stagnant positions. I'm going to try and stay busy. I'm going to try and pace myself so they've got action from one end to the other.
That's great advice, Joe. Like you said, pace yourself. They want movement throughout that whole time, whatever their time limit is going to be on their match. And, they don't want somebody who's going to go crazy for 45 seconds. And then you're like, hey, I got to stop this round. And there's nobody to take your spot. And, like you said, you get in a stagnant position, keep movement, try to find a way out of there. But, it's basically you're helping their cardio, you're helping them work on stuff. You're just helping them. It's a big way to make that person better and get them ready for that time limit that they're going to have on when they're in the tournament.
Yeah. So this article is obviously based on real life experience, just recent for me. And one of the training sessions we had, I was helping a new blue belt who was. He's like, I want to train from bad positions and learn some escapes and some transitions to slightly better positions. So he's like, let's start with you at top side control. And a few seconds in, it's like my what little bit of competitive nature I have, it kind of kicks in, and it's like, I'm not letting this guy out of side control. But that's not really what it's about. It's not about me. It's about helping my teammate out. So, I had to loosen up a little bit, and I let him work his escapes, and he would escape the position, and then we'd start back over. And there's a time where your teammates will come together to help you out, and there's a time when you need to come together to help your teammates out, and you just need to know when the right time is.
Yeah, Joe, that is great. A time for your teammates to help you, and then you're going to reciprocate and help them out. And, that's what a good, healthy team is there for. You guys are all in the same room to help each other get better and to have some fun. But what I really liked about this article, too, is, you offered the points, how you can help your teammates out. But then you had the second point about how going to competition training will benefit you, even if you're just not in competition mode training. If you're just, just as you said earlier, you're a hobbyist. And could you go over those and tell us how it's going to make you better?
Okay. Well, the first point was you will get better. You're going to absorb some of the information. You're going to be rolling with teammates who are doing everything they can to impose their game on you. And if you've been rolling, let's say you're a blue belt, you've been rolling with other blue belts, and you've got give and take in the gym, and it's easy to sort of misinterpret how effective your technique is. But when you're trying to sweep somebody in competition mode and their mindset is, I am not going to get swept, then you see how effective your sweeps really are. So it'll help you see some things in your game. But, I think more importantly, and this is point number 2, is you'll benefit from the strengthening of the team and the deepening of the camaraderie on the team. And that's really at the heart of why most people do jiu-jitsu, I think. You might think that you're a competitor, you want to be a fighter, but I think everybody just really likes being a part of a team. And when you're there for your teammates, that really strengthens that part of the journey.
Joe, I agree with you. I do think, your point number 2 is I think of the reason a lot of people do jiu-jitsu. And I just think all the friends I've made and all the relationships I've developed, the bonds. And, to be honest, that more outweighs all the technique and all the moves I've learned. Like, I could care less how many people I could armbar. It's just about all the great people I've developed, all the friendships I've made. And that's what's really kept me training jiu-jitsu.
Yep. And the last point is that when you're there for your teammates, they'll be there for you. And I don't do things for selfish reasons, but this is just kind of a nice win-win situation where you're putting out for them, you're there for them, and you don't know when you're going to need them, and then they'll be there for you. It might even be an off-the-mat struggle that you're having, but you've developed this sense of family, and it will come back and pay dividends.
Yeah, great article. There'll be a link in the show notes. Joe has written all of our great articles.
But Joe, before we end on this here, tell us about the quote there from the Honorable Captain Jack Sparrow.
Man, I'm a mariner by trade, and
that's a great quote.
I just love a good captain, and there's no captain like Captain Jack Sparrow. And the problem is not the problem. Your attitude about the problem is the problem.
Not my attitude. Your attitude problem. No, yeah, that's, man, we should have that for the quote of the week. Snuck in
we got
2
quotes of the week. Yeah, we got 2 this week.
Yeah.
No, that quote really hit me at the end, and it really is. It's your attitude about the problem is the problem.
And I wrote this specifically about when everybody's in tournament prep mode and you're not. But it's normal for schools to go through evolutions and to kind of take side trips. And, you might be a tournament kind of guy and you come to class one day and the instructor says, you know what? I've had a lot of requests for self-defense, women's self-defense, that kind of thing. So we're going to take the next 6 weeks and focus on that. That might not be your thing, but there will still be benefit both for you and for your team by you showing up. So just go with it, and it's all going to work out.
Well said, Joe.
Yep, it's great to have you writing articles for the site, Joe. I want to quickly mention our BJJ Brick event coming up. The big day, June 23rd. It's a Saturday. June 24th. It's a Sunday. June 23rd will be Tim Sled and Rolly Delgado, 2 returning people to the podcast, multiple interviews, some of our favorite people that we've had on the show. They're going to be here in Wichita, Kansas, the vacation destination of Sedgwick County, Kansas. No, really, if you're at all able to get here and have that free weekend on the 23rd and 24th, then that would be amazing. You're going to have a great time, learn a lot of jiu-jitsu, and have a lot of fun on and off the mats. And the stuff Tim and Rolly are going to show is going to be outstanding. And Sunday, June 24th, will be the BJJ Brick crew doing a seminar. I know I'll be showing some of my favorite techniques, some of the stuff that I hold very near and dear to my game, and I like sharing the most. Hopefully, we'll get Gary to show some of his little tricks he has. He's got some of the best. I don't know what Gary's going to show, but he's got some of the best top game attacks. I was telling somebody the other day, when Gary passes my guard, he's got like the highest percent of somebody who's going to submit me, of anybody I train with. And I train with some people who are way stronger than Gary, way faster, way better looking, all these things that you think would help. But Gary, his technique from his attacks he's just like spot on, and I'm hoping he shares some of those things that he does that make it a little different. And maybe he just got my number, but whatever that number is, he's got it. Anyway,
Byron's number is 8675309.
Yes, call that one.
I think Gary's kind of a bully. I'm looking forward to this event, but I've been sort of questioning whether I should go because
I'll
Gary's
tell you this, Joe. Okay, you'll get Gary rolls with people that he doesn't know differently than I do. I play a bit, but I will still tap people out. Gary, you're more likely to tap out Gary probably than anybody you roll with. He's going to have fun. He's going to put you in some bad spots, but he'll let you catch him. And that's just his style of play with people. So people will go tap Gary out 3 or 4 times and then go roll with me, and I catch him a couple times, and it's not a big deal. And then they watch Gary destroy me, and they're like, what is going on? I just beat that guy. And sometimes he's definitely the nice guy, except for when he's beating me up. And he's still nice about it, but yeah.
Gary sent me a picture last week, and he's holding this mannequin leg from the knee down, and it's been broken in several places. And it was captioned, "Looking forward to see you in June." So,
but though,
I'm a little worried.
Yeah, that goes back to our audiobook, Joe. A couple weeks ago about how to win, using the mind games. And really, that's all that was. Is I'm not even going to get on the mat with you. I'm going to fake injury. That was another thing we used, and that way I'd never lose. But right now, I'm trying to mess with your head, and then if you do show up, I'm going to fake injury. It always works well.
So what you're saying is, after I leave, you can say I have never lost to Joe Thomas.
Oh,
I've never rolled.
Yeah, I've got the shirt printed out already. I'm going to be wearing it.
Don't worry, I'm saying the same thing, brother.
Man, well,
Gary Hall has never leg locked me.
Byron, you always make me look like I'm a bully. I think I'm probably one of the easiest rolls around.
No, you are to everybody except for me, and and you don't roll super hard, but you catch me all the time, which is nice for me because I got to figure out how to work on my defenses more and more. You're definitely not a bully, but you bully me sometimes, which is appropriate. And you want to pick on those.
Well, what do you expect with all the way I get picked on this show?
You gotta vent somehow. But we'll be having good times. That's June 23rd, 24th, Wichita, Kansas. If you're coming from out of town, send me an email at bjjbrick@gmail.com. We'll make sure you have a great time. And I need to get a list of people that are going to be here attending kind of compiled. And that way we can communicate, while you're here. If we have a change of plans or we all want to go out to dinner at a certain place, we're able to communicate kind of just need some information so we could all be in the same boat that Joe's captaining. Also, the June 22nd should be an open mat. It's all at Fox Fitness. Jake Fox, he's been on the show before. He's been super nice putting this event together. He's doing a lot of the legwork, so we definitely appreciate that. And good times on the northwest side of Wichita in June, my friends. Gary mentioned the audiobook. So I've got a couple of audiobooks I've actually produced and went through the efforts of making them be published and available for sale. But Gary and Joe will work on the audiobook for just a few minutes at the end of a show, because what happens is I'll throw them a topic or a title, and they got to come up with some content to fill it. None of these books have ever been published, but that's quite all right because we have fun talking about them. Guys, your book this week is 6 Minute BJJ. Get your black belt in 6 minutes a day. What in the heck is going on here, guys? I don't understand how this could be done. It looks like one of those kind of like 6 minute abs type of a thing, but it's jiu-jitsu?
You didn't read the fine print? 6 minutes a day for 72 years. That's all, man. Just 6 minutes a day. If you're 5 and you start now, it's possible.
But that's just option one. We have different options available. So you can get it with option 2, 6 minutes a day in less than a year. We just need your credit card number, and we will be pulling payments out each and every day for 365 days.
That's right.
There's a couple different options.
There's the free version, and then there's the one you pay just a little bit extra for.
Yeah, just a little bit. Like I said, we're going to pull the money out each and every day. And what is it per day, Joe?
It's $545 a day if you want a 3-day package, or it's $3.55 a day if you want a lifetime package.
Yeah, It's a small, phenomenal fee.
Yeah, and the great thing is we have a very affordable sign-up fee. The sign-up fee is only $1,000 for both those different packages. So, one time $1,000, and then you have the either 3-time charges or the daily charge. And at the very end, we have a post fee also of $2,500. And then once you pay the post fee, then you get your black belt. So it's a great deal.
And you can actually, if you call now for the first 300 callers,
Joe's cell phone number,
you can get an additional black belt fee for a small shipping and handling fee. You get an additional black belt for a small shipping and handling fee of $9.99. That's $999.
I mean, where can you get that many black belts? You can get 2 of those black belts for just under $100,000.
Okay, guys,
what a deal that is.
We got a problem here.
What's the problem?
Because
I don't see a problem.
I sell an audiobook your first year in BJJ. I don't think the problem is a bluebell by the end of that thing. It's $11.99.
It doesn't cost enough, though. I mean, how can you get good if something's only costing $11.99?
That's true. But your book is going to be way better than mine.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
We do reference your book in our program, though. is how to get your first year of BJJ in 1 day.
Is that listening to the book, and does that count?
We condense everything from your book into a 1 day lesson, and that's it. So the first year is out of the way within the first couple of days.
Yep. And you want to know what the best thing is? We actually sell that book. We're a reseller from BJJ Brick. We sell it for only $9.99, and that's $999. 3 installments of $999. I mean, where do you get your first year for $3,000? That's a great deal.
Wow. My book will not touch a mustard anymore.
Yep. So we've got a lot going on. And, Joe, tell them about these shirts.
Yeah. For the first 500 callers, you'll get a shirt that has Byron's picture on the front. And that is... you always talk about just having challenge matches on the street. You talk about testing your jiu-jitsu skills on the street. If you've got a shirt with Byron's picture on the front of it, you are likely to have a lot of conflict. So this is our gift to you, and it's a great way to improve your fight skills.
Yep.
And we're going to give it to you, not for free, because why would we want to give it to you for free? We're going to give it to you for $99.99. Plus a small fee for shipping and handling of $49.99. And we ship anywhere within the 5-state region next to Wichita, Kansas. So what a deal.
What a deal. Wow. You mentioned Wichita, Kansas. That's where we are located. That's where the big BJJ Brick event will be in June. If you want to train with Gary or myself, send us an email at bjjbrick@gmail.com or hit us up on Facebook. Joe? You're south of Houston?
Yep, I'm south of Houston. I can be anywhere in the Houston area within an hour. So if you're in the Houston area, hit me up. I do work out of town. I can't guarantee I'll train with you, but maybe you're just looking for some information on the jiu-jitsu scene. I might be able to point you in the right direction. When I'm at work, I'm near New Orleans. So if you're in that area, let me know, and maybe I'll be around and we can train.
Joe, you can get anywhere in Houston in about an hour. I wasn't aware that you could go anywhere in Houston in under an hour.
As long as
helicopter.
As long as it's not rush hour traffic, Houston is the easiest big city that I've driven in.
Okay.
They've got a good system of loops around the city you can take, and yeah, it really is an easy place to be.
And one thing that Joe will really help you out, if you're just looking to get around, Joe does sell maps of the city of Houston and best way to get stuff, and he sells it for only $9.99, $999. What a deal! So definitely check Joe out. It's a lot better than Rand McNally.
Yeah, don't buy into all that gimmicky MapQuest stuff. And I mean, there's just nothing like a paper map that you can hold in your hand. So yeah, hit me up and I'll hook you up.
Yeah, do you really think those old maritime captains actually had MapQuest and stuff like that? No, they did it. They looked at the stars. They had paper. I mean, that's the way it should be done.
That's right. A good pocket watch and a compass and a sextant, and that's all you need, man.
Yeah, Byron's got a sextant.
But it's a small one.
Man, that went a different direction than I was prepared to say.
Yeah.
I was going to talk about the next show for next week.
What do we got next week, Byron?
I don't know. I got to find my sextant. Next week, we have Livia Glukowska. She is one of the top performing women competitors, and she's from Australia, training with Absolute MMA. We had a couple of their past members on the show, Craig Jones, Lachlan Giles. Great team down there and great training environment. Really happy to bring her input towards the show. Had a great time this week. Really happy to have Brandon Mullins on the show. Thanks again. That was great. I can't believe I hadn't had him on the show earlier. And he was recommended by some local friends here that I train with. And I guess he slipped through my system of people I need to get on the show. That happens sometimes. And I'm glad to have a team that will help me pick up that when it happens. A little bit better late than never, I suppose. Anyways, we'll catch you guys next week. Stay sweaty, my friends.
And don't forget to shower.
Train hard, train smart, get better. We'll see you on the mats, guys.
And don't buy the overpriced audiobook. It's ridiculous.
But if you do buy one right now, we'll send you some more free gifts. Well, they're actually not free. They're only $9.99. $9.99 plus a small shipping fee of $14.99.
Gary's giving out free hugs at the BJJ Brick event.
They're definitely free, but the shipping and handling is not. Just a small charge.
Thank you for listening. I hope you find the time today to roll. After all, the best way to get better at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Thanks so much for checking out this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. Check us out next week. And don't forget to check out the archives at bjbrick.com or on this YouTube channel.